Good afternoon and hello, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, Flycast Partners, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy day to join us for our presentation on Ivanti IT Automation. Today is one of our virtual lunch and learns, which means for all those of you in attendance today, within 5 business days or so following this event, you will receive a Domino's gift card for attending. So please give us about 5 business days for those to go out. And should you have any questions during today's presentation, please reach out in the Q&A section of this GoToWebinar platform, and we'll be happy to get those answers for you as many as possible, as much as time will allow. That's what we have John and David for. So let me introduce you to Flycast's very own Chief Operations Officer, John Pastorino, and one of our lead senior consultants, David Bryant. They will be our presenters today, and between the two of them, they have several decades of combined experience in the IT space, ranging from ITSM to identity and the automation and device control and many, many things in between. So before we get started, though, let me introduce Flycast Partners. For those of you that don't already know us, Flycast Partners offers best-in-class implementation services and training in IT service management, IT asset management, IT operations management, enterprise service management, and workload automation spaces, all using ITIL best practice. Our professional services team has well over 5,500 professional services engagements and counting, both on-site and remote. And keep that word remote in mind, especially with the COVID-19 situation. That's pretty important nowadays for organizations to know how to deliver remotely, and we are experts at that. As an organization, Flycast Partners has well over 1,100 regular customers all throughout Canada and the United States. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278, or visit our website. Chat with one of our IT experts during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, this little green box down here in the right-hand corner. They'll be happy to answer questions or get you anything that you're looking for. If you don't want to do that, we invite you to email us at info@flycastpartners.com. But I do encourage you to check out all the goings on here at Flycast, whether that be upcoming publisher events or webinars, or check out our podcast page with a variety of topics. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to our presenters today, John and David. And while John is taking control of the screen, I want to remind each and every one of you to please type those questions in the questions section of this GoToWebinar. And I will ask those of John and David throughout the presentation. We'll get as many of those answered as time will allow today. It is all yours, John and David.
All right, thank you. Can you see my screen there?
It looks fantastic. Looks great.
Okay, great. So as Rich, first, thank you for the introduction. And like Rich said, my name is John and Pastorino. I'm the Chief Operations Officer here at Flycast. And my background is, not to say exclusively, but somewhat focused on identity and automation and RFID type technology. And then with me, I have David Bryant. And David Bryant is a senior consultant, but he's more than that. He's actually somebody who has contributed extensively to a lot of the things that we're going to discuss today from a strategic perspective and functionality perspective. So David used to be the product owner of some of these products that we're going to talk about today. So he's really the, I want to say the source of information throughout this presentation. So with that, I'd like to just go right into it. And I want to talk about, what is identity? And when we talk about identity, automation. When we talk about automation, it has many different definitions for many different people. And one of the things that I focus on and David focuses on is really one of the biggest things that we look at it's the removal of manual touch points to introduce consistency throughout the process. And you can see this is a very formal definition of automation, but really at the end of the day, you can break it down with, you can do more with less, introduce consistency and standardization. And when I say that, focusing on having the same results every time, each time, and then the reduction or removal of manual touch points. And that's really what we're going to focus on today. And we're going to talk about how this ties into the Ivanti, different Ivanti technologies and the things that, we feel you can do utilizing automation with your Ivanti software. So what does Gartner say about automation? They talk about it's the glue for digital business, but really the second comment, I think, is what's extremely important from a competitive perspective. We're all in a competitive market. We all looked at, we have to be better, we have to be more efficient, we have to be faster than our competitors, or we're going to be irrelevant. And that's another thing why we focus on automation, is because automation can help you do more quicker. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that as we go through this presentation. But really, at the end of the day, the second comment, what's driving automation, is the fact you absolutely have to get faster or get better faster. And the only way to do it is by using automation. And you can see there's a lot of different things coming to market right now about automation and monitoring, and both on the network side and then on the personnel side or the internal operations side. And it's almost overwhelming sometimes. But really, so the things we want to try to do today is kind of break this down and make it simple. Make it simple to understand, make it simple for people who already have specific tools in their cadre or in their portfolio, and how to exploit the functionality of those tools in a more effective manner.
Yeah, and John, there's probably another thing to add into that, which isn't really described here, but you talked about it a little earlier, is the standardization. And standardization is becoming more and more important as we're doing this remote work, because with standardization becomes an increase in security as well. So you can make sure things get done, they don't get dropped. And that's one thing that we don't have a quote for, but definitely, take into account as we're going through these slides.
Thank you, David. And that's another thing, utilizing automation in your process, and then putting, and I'm going to say, controls within the process so you can alert yourself. So you can, when I say alert, like if there's potentially a catastrophic event occurring or going to occur, you can utilize automation from an alert system. You can talk about bringing people, into your organization in a more effective manner. And we know that sometimes bringing people into the organization, the onboarding process is very manual intensive. And sometimes it can be weeks before people have what they need to be, effective. You talk about patching, the certain things, and we're going to go into more in this, but how to patch a box. You can do that through automation, utilizing automation. And we're just going to go into a lot of these examples as we go through this. What's on the screen right now is really, it's kind of a traditional hierarchy of IT maturity within an organization. And one of the things I want to point out is a lot of people are over there in that chaotic state. And when I say chaotic, there's nothing planned. There's nothing, you're reactive. You're completely reactive in almost everything that you do. And we deal with a lot of customers who are in a chaotic state. And then how do we take them from there and get them through the reactive and then proactive? It takes time, but it's achievable. It's just really having a plan in place and then utilizing the tools the way that they should be utilized, the most effective way within your organization. But a lot of times we go into organizations and they'll think they're proactive. They'll think they're services. And when you start breaking it down and looking at the processes or looking at what they have in place, they're truly chaotic. And we want to get away from that. So if you look in the middle of the proactive, which is an organization that's semi-mature, they obviously have, certain measures in place to track, track performance and those type of things. But this is really where you want to start introducing automation. And you can see automate is right there in the middle. And one of the reasons why you want to wait till you get to this proactive status is because that is where you don't want to put automation into an environment where processes are bad or data is bad, because you're just going to have bad results. And that's something that we have to focus on to make sure that when you as an organization or we as somebody who could help an organization sit down and evaluate the internal processes, the internal status of the organization, and to include the cleanliness of the data, to include how things are going to interact, how they're going to be interfaced, where the information is going to come from, where the information is going to go. So we help and we look at all those things and we make it as clean as possible before we implement any automation. Because again, automation with bad data and bad processes is going to have very bad results. So based upon that maturity model, to break it down even lower from a granular standpoint, these are just stages of automation. And you can see it just reflects exactly the hierarchy I just showed you from an IT maturity perspective, except now we're just focused on automation. And again, you look at, let's just say, level one. actually, everything is ad hoc. There's no processes in place. It's just completely firefight on a daily basis. Level 2, you want to say repeatable, but intuitive processes are followed, but they're still at a very high degree of reliance on knowledge of individuals and human intervention. And again, those are some of the things that you want to eliminate, and then go back to the do more with less. And then you want to look at level 3. And level 3 is really, from my perspective, is the most cost-effective maturity level within an organization, unless, of course, you're doing something that's kind of life or death, like medical devices, certain things that could have a dramatic impact on individuals. But in most cases, the things that we do, say banking, some technology, retail, those kind of things, it's cost effective to get to level 3. Because once you get to level 4, you're talking about spending more money. You're talking about, all the effort that goes into, getting to a specific maturity level. But 3 is being proactive, and 3 is using automation in the most efficient manner to execute your tasks. And then level 5, and I could be honest with you, I've only seen one level 5 organization in my entire career, and it wasn't even in the United States. So again, is it cost efficient or cost effective? That's something the organization has to make that decision on. But again, the way I look at it is, are you just throwing a lot of money downrange to achieve a specific level that you're really not going to get your return on investment in the long run? So there's 6 types of automation. There's continuous configuration automation, and that's going to be something like Puppet or Chef. Then you're going to have network automation, which is like SolarWinds or Ansible. You have robotic information, which is Automation Anywhere or WorkFusion. Then you have Salesforce automation, which is really Microsoft Dynamics or Zendesk or something like that. You have software test automation. We talk about DevOps. You talk about utilizing software to execute your testing in a more efficient manner, so you can do those incremental releases at a much faster pace. You're talking about rational test, Workbench, Visual Studio. But what we're going to focus on today is IT process automation. And we're going to focus on the benefits of this within an organization, and what does it bring. So if you look at types of processes that you can use for IT process automation, you can talk about the coordination of work, the coordination of things happening within your organization with other departments. You can go cross-departmental. When you start talking about automation, it becomes less an IT function and becomes more an organizational function. And so it's adopted across the organization, and it's not specific to IT. In fact, IT is only the executor when you start introducing automation. It's the ownership and the input from the stakeholders in the other departments that define the functionality of automation throughout the organization. And when you initially talk about bringing automation into an organization, it is a very push mentality, because people don't understand it. People don't understand necessarily the downstream impact that automation can have on an organization. So, but once you go through that, and it's all about organizational change, and once you go through that and you have these quick wins, and you have certain things that you can show the return on investment almost immediately, and then you can show, the consistency, the standardization, all the things associated with automation, and then people start pulling it in. People want more. Departments want more. HR wants more. Operations wants more. Sales wants more. And that's kind of the mindset. And I'm, it's not the easiest transition in a lot of ways, but once you get to a certain point and you can show people the benefits of automation, it just goes. And I'm not going to oversimplify, because getting to that point, it can be relatively difficult sometimes. It just depends on the organization. But again, once it's adopted, it's literally, you can automate almost anything. So that's some of the things. So when I look at here, like coordinate work across different departments, like things that have to happen at specific times. You want to talk about sequential work. It's a very sequential process to bring somebody into your organization, to terminate somebody within your organization, to change things within your organization, to get access to downstream applications within your organization. You want to talk about cross-functional. Again, it's not just IT anymore. This is not coming from IT. This is coming from the organization. The organization owns automation. Then you want to talk about orchestrating tasks. When and how things are going to be delivered, and how and when they're going to happen. Those are the things that you can dramatically impact utilizing IT process automation. But what are the benefits? And I've talked about this from the first slide. You want to talk about operational efficiency. And again, go back to that maturity model. And we talk about people thinking that they're at a specific state, but really they're in a chaotic state. They have no efficiencies, and then they're trying to throw, more, and I want to say bodies or personnel or FTEs into IT just to sustain. Well, that's not working smart and that's not working efficiently. That's where you bring automation in. And automation isn't a tool to displace workers. Automation is a tool to help workers be more productive. And then you can redeploy those assets to be proactive vice reactive. And those are the things you want to focus on, because that's what automation can do. You can talk about reducing costs. You can talk about it, and we'll go into a little bit about examples. David will go into a little bit about examples of quick wins within an organization that dramatically reduces their costs or their ticket counts or the personnel required to execute a task, and all those people can be redeployed. You talk about standardization. Standardization is really what we want to get to. We want to have the same results each and every time. We want to make sure that when auditors are talking to us, it's not that we have to go through a LeapX trying to find out why something happened within the organization, where it happened, how it happened. We want to make sure we have consistent results each time, every time. And then you want to talk about mitigate risks. Human intervention just introduced risks. And we know that everybody does things differently. Everybody has their own way. Sometimes you could wake up, not have your third cup of coffee, and you can make mistakes. And those are the things you want to get away from. And obviously you can do that utilizing automation, because the process is defined and the process executes the same way each and every time. So let's just talk about traditional manual process. And this is really, okay, and I'm just going to break it down into, say, an onboarding or what really happens when somebody comes within an organization. So we have an individual, an employee, a new hire that's coming into the organization, and they have to have these specific things. They need to have an AD account. They need to have a mail account. They need to be in certain distribution lists or groups. They need to have a VM, and they need to have access to certain applications. Each one of these is a request to your service desk or to the help desk to get these things done. And these are literally, in most cases, these are usually day one entitlements that you want to make sure these people have to be effective as soon as they sit in that seat on day one. But this process, the manual process, each one of these is a ticket submission to the service desk. So you can see that little circle thing there. That's the service desk, and then it has to go to a manager in most cases for approval. Yes, John's being onboarded. Yes, John's going to have this role. Yes, John needs this type of technology. Yes, John needs this kind of access. Well, then it goes back into the IT ticket queue for execution. They get it, and then they execute it. But when they execute it, you got to think about this takes time. So if you look at this, and this is just examples based upon time studies and desk audits that we've executed as an organization, you can see the most basic birthright entitlements that somebody has to have, or birthright items somebody has to have, take days. And right here, you're losing productivity. And it's not a good experience for the end user. In fact, it's a horrible experience for the end user, because now they're sitting there and they're thinking, oh my gosh, how important am I to this organization if it's taking them days to get me what I need to be productive? So here's another example. Somebody comes in, again, they need a laptop, they need a virtual machine. Well, how do they do that? Well, it goes into request. It has to go to supervisor for approval. It goes into the IT ticket queue. IT gets it, executes it, but sometimes they have more questions, has to go back to the supervisor, and then it gets executed again. So now let's look at this. And this is again, based upon desktop or desk audits that we've executed and time studies we've executed by implementing automation at specific organizations. But it takes days. And if you sit there and this is sequential and this is linear, this could literally take a week before somebody is productive, or somebody can have a dramatic impact on your organization. And again, it's a bad experience. So let's look at automation. Let's go back to the same 5 things that a new person needed when they came in. We are like, okay, here's John, new employee guy. I go into some repository. It gets synced utilizing automation. And then it just starts to get executed immediately. Oops, I'm sorry. Go back. So then it starts getting executed immediately. And you start looking at that. So you've taken a process, you've taken something utilizing automation, and you've taken it from days, weeks, down to minutes. And so now you're thinking about how the efficiency, and again, let's go standardization, efficiency, mitigate risk. This is another thing that we talk about. If you have auditors that come in, and a lot of you on the webinar here, I'm sure have internal and external auditors. And I don't know if you've ever gone through an audit, but a lot of times it takes a lot of time to show why something happened, when it happened, how it happened. And so when you have automation and you sit down with your auditors, both internal and external, and you can show them why something had happened immediately because you have a repository of historic information available, your audit goes from weeks to minutes. And it's amazing. And again, you have to go through that maturity process, but that's what you can achieve. And there's a lot of other things associated with automation that we're not going to have time today to talk about. But it's just from a return on investment, it is incredible what you can gain within your organization. So with that, I'm sorry, I need to go to David now. And David's going to talk definitely about products. And like I said earlier, David has had a dramatic impact on a lot of things we're talking about today from a strategic and from a functional perspective when he was the product owner of some of these products that we're talking about today. David?
Thanks, John. Yeah, so we're talking about automation and how it can affect some of the products inside of Ivanti. And when Ivanti acquired the automation product, the first thing that it was really integrated with, because it was done already, was with Identity Director. And with Identity Director, we really took a look at automation, and we used automation to do 3 really different types of things. So the first, going back to that slide that John showed with the quotes, the first thing was glue, right? So one of the things that Identity Director uses automation for is to actually link a bunch of those systems together. So it can talk to those in a sequential order and make sure tasks are getting done. It eliminates that gap time, the time in between talking to all those systems, in order to do things like provision and deprovision or onboard and offboard new users and do role change and stuff like that. So one of the things you can see here is really, talking to all those different systems like AD, Exchange, Concur, any of that stuff, where in a traditional process, what would happen is that's usually different teams inside of that service desk or help desk. So they have to notify each one when, they're ready for the next step, because, you can't do like an Exchange task without having AD first. You can also, other systems will have dependencies. And if you don't meet those dependencies, you can't move on with the task. Well, with automation and doing that standardization and that task automation, you can control that very granularly and make sure that prerequisites are done ahead of time. So it speeds up that whole process. It's not just the time to do the task, but also the time for notifications in between. Also, we do talk about doing more with less. So one of the ways that automation can help is it can eliminate that manual interaction, which then also increases standardization and security. Things are going to be done the same way, even if John didn't have his 3 cups of coffee in the morning, because the automation task is going to do it the way it's told, which is dictated by the business process. And that's not limited to those on-prem applications, talking to things like Concur, talking to things like Office 365. All of that can be done through APIs, which automation can really, utilize. And that's how a lot of these systems are done together. Anything to add on that, John?
One of the things, and I'm going to look at the last bullet there about contractors. And what we find is when we go out to organizations, we find that a lot of organizations have difficulties monitoring and I'm going to say controlling their contractor footprint. And a lot of times they'll have potentially a spreadsheet, and that's the only way they monitor. So you have people who have access, when they shouldn't have access, or people needing access that didn't go through some kind of automated approval process to get access or retain access. So we do find contractors obviously they contribute extensively to organizations, but it's a huge pain point from an administrative and an IT perspective. And that's something that automation, again, we can build a process, or a process can be built to track, to request, track, approve, and terminate contractors in a far more effective way than obviously monitoring spreadsheet and hopefully, giving access and taking away access in a timely manner.
Yeah, and by utilizing that as well, you are following the rules and you are making sure that when the contractor is no longer needed, of course, you're going to return all of those entitlements. So you actually are increasing security as well, which, auditors really love. So, yeah, definitely. Thanks for pointing that one out.
Okay.
Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
So service management. Yeah, perfect. So, we can, again, do the same type of automation, the glue, and also the do more with less with service management automation. So really what you're looking in here is, you're taking out some of those tasks that when somebody requests something, it's automatically approved. You don't have to wait for somebody in the help desk or the service desk to actually do that task. You can actually add a workflow block in there to call an automation task to actually get that done. So that'll be done in the same way. It'll be logged, it'll be recorded, it'll be tracked. And things that you can do, for example, are application requests and delivery. And you can utilize automation to call EPM. You can utilize automation to call whatever else you want to deliver that. So it's being done right then and there without having to have somebody go to a different console or a different product and call those. You can also, modify group access requests or distribution lists. These are some low-hanging fruit, some things that are easy to do that, there is no reason really for a person to have to add somebody to a group or distribution list. That can happen directly through automation. It's low risk. It's something definitely to start with. And it increases SLAs. It makes, employees happier because they know that they can go to that service desk, they can have something done, and it'll happen right away. They don't have to wait. And also another good one for this is application access not managed by Active Directory, because a lot of times those are done by application owners. They're done by a separate team. So, they have to ask for somebody with the correct access and approval to go add you to Concur, to add you to Salesforce, to give you the right roles and permissions. Well, if you're using that automation platform, what you can do is actually have that being done without the service desk having to know those credentials, without having to pass it off to a separate team. So that's a way that we can do kind of that self-service, that, more with less type of thing. Another way we've seen people utilize self-service or self-help and automation inside of service management is to automatically gather information when somebody's having an issue. So if they are having an issue with, a slow PC or something like that, a lot of times that end user really doesn't know what's happening. So you can use automation to, when they submit a ticket, submit an incident, you can use it to gather information that the service desk personnel would need. You can do that ahead of time, put that in the ticket so that when somebody does need to look at it, they'll have all that information without going back and forth and asking questions that can be done, and information gathered with that automation. You can also fix certain tasks as well without having to have somebody do anything. If their PC is running slow, you might go through a whole checklist, and you can do that checklist within, 5-10 minutes on that PC, that virtual machine, without a user intervention.
Yep.
So, yep. Anything to add there, John?
Well, one of the other things about the good thing about automation tying into ISM is that now people are still familiar with the ISM tool and the process that's associated with ISM, the submission of tickets, the resolution of tickets, the process of tickets. So you're not changing anything. What you're doing is you're putting it the back end on steroids. And like David said, all those different things that he just went through, those are being executed, and I would say it's transparent to the requester. But what happens again is, and I know we beat this to death, you have standard output, standard results each and every time, and more efficient because you can go through the process through utilizing your ISM tool, literally in seconds. And it can even go through, if you have an approval process, say you have something that has to go through, it has to go to procurement to be approved. You can sit there and submit a ticket, but it can go through and it's all automated. So help desk person doesn't need to reach out to application owner or procurement to say, hey, this has a financial impact on our organization. Is this approved? Is this not approved? It's all automated. I mean, they still have to check a box, but again, it sends it to them. They check the box, yes, no, maybe so. It comes back and it's done, and the ticket is closed. And now you have a historical record of all that information inside your ISM tool.
And you mean like checking assets to see if there's licenses, John? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep, exactly. So
joking. The next slide ties perfectly into Asset Manager as well. So like John was saying, you can automatically have scans set to run to see if there's unused applications. You can talk to other systems that are monitoring those applications. If those applications are no longer being used, you can have automation call other systems to uninstall those applications, which would free up licenses that can be redeployed later. So again, this is not necessarily having Asset Manager contact those systems, but it's really having Asset Manager be part of those systems that are being used and talked to, and it's really tying all those systems together. Another big thing that we hear from customers is that, when there's virtual machines, a lot of people don't treat virtual machines like typical hardware assets, and they just deploy them without, respect to operating system licenses and application licenses. But if you're putting automation in, if somebody requests something from the service desk, for example, for a new virtual machine, you can have automation talk to Asset Manager to see if there is licenses in the organization, and if there's not, you can reach out and let them know that something needs to be updated, added, or purchased. And then once that is fulfilled, you can go along with that task. So again, you're doing more with less. You're making that task, that list more streamlined. You're not waiting on people to go and get things done.
Yep. And one of the other things about this, and again, utilizing automation, is you're talking about, let's just look at VMs. We had one customer that had approximately 7,000 VMs, and every night, and again, utilizing the count that you're getting and the information you're getting back from Asset Manager, and then automation is, they did a boot storm every morning. So it was a way to reduce, obviously, any kind of live sessions going out there, or sessions that were sitting out there that were not being utilized, but somebody logged in at some period of time. And that costs money from an operational perspective. So every night they would do a boot storm, but it was all automated. So you come in the morning and you could look and you could see people coming online as they went into their VMs. But again, it wasn't perpetual, which obviously keeps your costs down. So that's another way to use these types of tools.
Yep. And then, adding automation to Endpoint Manager. Endpoint Manager, by itself has some automation into it, but you're using, Ivanti Automation to have all those other systems contact Endpoint Manager to do something like install an application and patch that application after it's been installed. And the neat thing is that, using the Ivanti Automation product, if you write it once, you can then have all of these other systems use it. So it's no different, installing an application via Identity Director or Service Manager or another product, and having all those talk to, things like Asset Manager before they communicate to Endpoint Manager. So it's just a way to be more efficient in that whole process.
Okay.
And endpoint security as well. So, this was definitely an interesting one. With endpoint security and whitelisting, we had a lot of companies that were interested in that, but they saw the workload that was going to be needed for adding applications because it's a whitelist approach. So what they decided to do was, they would add either in Identity or Service Manager a way for a new user to request a new application. And it would upload the application automatically. It would scan it with a virus scanner. It would compare it against known bad application lists that you could get from things like NIST. And then it would go through those and take a look at all of the applications that are in that installer package. It would automatically get the checklist, the fingerprints of those applications, and then it could talk to that product, and it would automatically whitelist those applications without having any user intervention. And now it would only do those for some things like Microsoft and Google, things with known good publishers that didn't need a second review. So the end users were more productive because they could automatically get that stuff done right away without having to wait. and if there was something that needed to be done, it could kick it off and have somebody look at it. But doing things like that now made whitelisting, available, and it made it something that was a viable option for those companies. You can also do that same type of thing with elevated applications. You could have somebody request a ticket to elevate an application for 30 minutes or an hour. It can automatically do that and then return it when it's no longer needed. Again, increasing standardization and security because you're all in the same thing and you're not having an elevated application sit around there for the life cycle of the employee. So doing that, automatically increases SOC security and a whole bunch of other stuff that auditors really like. Anything to add there, John?
No, David. Thank you.
Perfect. So, tying it all together, we gave a bunch of examples, but if you look back, at that scenario that John did with the automated process and bringing somebody into an organization, we can take a look at that. And the way that would look is, HR would do their thing, right? Their pre-employment screening, everything that needs to be done, background checks, I-9 forms and the like. They put that into their HR system, and then they can trigger a scan, which would use automation to determine, is there anybody new? If there's anybody new or changed or removed from this organization, they can automatically provision an account. Let's say somebody's added. They can provision an account ahead of that person being hired, and they can email the manager the information. Now they can provision that account and maybe make it disabled so that nobody can log in or use the account, but that account is available for other things. So once that manager gets emailed and notified, they could then, for instance, go into ISM and order hardware, and maybe they need a virtual machine because they're also working remote. And then depending on, of course, who they are, they would also get software installed on that as well, all done automatically because Service Manager could trigger automation to provision a VM. It could, trigger EPM to install that software and then patch it automatically without having somebody to go do it. Now, of course, you can't automate everything because you can't automate, grabbing a laptop out of the depot, checking it out, and then plugging it in and turning it on. But once you do turn it on, you can have automation kick in to actually do all the other stuff. Now, let's say all that happened, and on the hire date, we can automatically enable that user account and their email account and send their passwords now to their manager, and if they provided a private email, to that private email address. So on day one, they'll have all their information they need to actually go and do whatever they need to do. It'll all be set up, it'll all be there, and you'll have a really great day one experience. Now, of course, you're not going to get everything. So on that day one, the employee can log into a virtual machine, let's say remotely, and they see it, they're missing stuff. So they can log into Service Manager, of course, because the account's already set up. They can request software. If that's pre-approved, they can automatically trigger EPM to install it. If it's not, it might need to go for manager approval before that happens. And then, automation will actually go and do that, patch it, and it'll be right there. So it's a great experience. It's a great, way for the employee to feel welcome. And plus, you're doing more with less in that whole scenario. Yep. So you don't have to wait for somebody to take a look at that ticket to do it and then pass it off to somebody else to do another portion of it. As much as you can, you're going to automate that.
And another beauty behind this is, and David said it earlier, but if you key on some, let's say core characteristics or core variables of an employee and say, person, location, and title, those type of things, and you can put them into anything. You can put them into any security group based upon their location or their title or their function within the organization. You could have two people sitting side by side that came on at the same time that need completely, different tools and functionality within the network to execute their job. But again, you can do that from automation. It's unlimited on what you can do with automation. It's just really understanding the downstream impact that it has on an organization, and really what is needed by the end user. What are you trying to achieve, or what are you trying to automate? Those are the things that you have to identify, and those are the things you have to, as I said earlier, make it known and make it somewhat clean, and then you have the opportunity to implement automation.
Yeah, and of course, like John keeps reiterating, you have to have the right policies and procedures in place first, because the only thing you're going to do with automating bad policies and procedures is make things happen worse faster. So definitely there's a lot of downstream impact. So you want to make sure you get that right, which is why you don't just want to start with automation at the reactive, chaotic stage. You actually want to have a little more process maturity in place before that.
Yep. So, I mean, that's really all we have, Rich. And I don't know if there's any questions or anything's been submitted from the attendees, but that's all we really have to present.
Well, as far as questions are concerned, there were no questions based on the presentation you just gave at all. So, folks, if you do have questions, go ahead and ask right now. We'll be happy to get those answered for you. That's what John and David are here for. I do have quite a few folks that have reached out and said, thank you for this presentation. They really enjoyed it. Yeah, there's a couple of those type of comments. But folks, if you have questions, we do have a few minutes left, so go ahead and type those in there. Should you decide that, hey, I don't feel like asking my question live today, you can also call us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. Or you can chat with us live online on our website in that bottom right-hand corner. They'll be happy to chat with you Monday through Friday during normal business hours. You can also email us at flycastpartners.com, info@flycastpartners.com. Here we go. Here's a question for you. This comes from Adam, and Adam wants to know what training opportunities are available for new customers in this.
Training for automation is literally sitting down with a consultant or sitting down with a service provider and going through and monitoring, first of all, building your process, your as is, and then defining the to be, and then working with that consultant to build that, I don't want to say that workbook or that process. And it's truly how you learn the thing. You learn how to utilize automation. You have to be in it. You have to be utilizing it. You have to be working with it. It's not necessarily you're going to read a book and you're going to understand automation, A to Z. So really a lot of it is sitting down with, a consultant or sitting down with a service provider and really doing it within your environment, because it means more, because now you're understanding, you're identifying your pain points immediately, you're understanding your opportunities, and then you're understanding the output and then the end state. So that's normally when we go in and we do engagements and we have engineers sit with us and sit side by side, it's a teach as you go. It's somewhat of a teach as you go environment. And David, I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, I was going to say it's also going to be slightly different depending on where you're putting that automation in. So having some good examples, we can definitely, show you in those certain scenarios the best way to do that automation. So it's really going to, like John said, sitting down, getting the lay of the land, doing a few of them together, and then showing you, how to move forward.
Okay, great stuff. And now, any way to practice by myself is one of the questions on here. This is asked by James.
Dave, I would probably have to kick that over to you.
I was going to kick it over to you. Maybe I'm not sure if there's some online classes or not, but again, it's going to really depend on where you want to start, what you want to do. But definitely reach out. We can help with that.
Okay, and then Marcus, you're asking for pricing information. I will make sure that we have someone reach out to you on that. The folks that we have online today, they're not associated with the pricing of this. But what I'll do is I'll kick this over to David Apple, and I'll have one of those folks reach out to you and get you some pricing on this and talk to you about it. Francis, and there's quite a few of you out there that are asking about the recording for this. Yes, the recording will be available in the next couple days. We'll make sure you get that. I'll go through and clean it up a little bit. But all those of you that attended, you will be able to get a recording of this. Folks, wow, we're getting overwhelming how great this presentation was. That's very much appreciated by both John and David. I'm sure you guys are blowing us up on that. So glad you felt like there was a lot of good information. And you definitely want to one of the organizations here, I know you said you want to revisit this. to take a look at your needs, we are more than happy to help you out with that. So we'll be in touch with you shortly to see if we can help you revisit that and look for the needs. Here's another question. What is the average time for implementation? This comes from Marcus.
Well, and I know you're going to get the typical service provider answer. It depends. It depends on the organization. And one of the things, and let's go back to the beginning that we talked about, it's the environment, the cleanliness of the data, the processes, and the buy-in from the environment. And again, like I said, it's kind of a push. When you initially start this, it's a push methodology because people don't understand it. People don't understand the downstream impact. And then it becomes a pull, obviously, once you start showing the benefits and return on investment. But every engagement is different. You can go into a very mature organization that has a very clean AD environment, and they know what variables they want to key on, and their HRIS system is running as effectively as it can. And their downstream, the downstream applications are their access and the roles and responsibilities of end users are very well defined. That could be a very short period of time. But then again, if you get into a chaotic environment and you start looking at, the fire drill that they're going through on a daily basis, literally it can take quite a long time. In some cases, it could take up to 6. I know you don't get scared, but it could take up to 6 months sometimes, just trying to get everything clean and get everybody understanding, the process and how it goes, the desk audits, the time audits, the to-be and the as-is and the to-be process documentation. But again, it's all dependent upon the maturity of the organization when you first go in.
Okay. And
how far you want to take it as well.
Once again, folks, we are more than happy to go ahead and help you with that. So and get more definitive answers for you. So we'll be happy to talk to you and see what your organization's needs are and help you with that. Any other questions, folks? Now's the time to ask. Any last minute comments, John or David?
No, I just want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity. I truly believe, and I'm sure you can hear it in both David's voice and my voice, it's unlimited what you can do with automation and how you can tie it into really literally anything within your organization. It's just how creative can you be? It's a process. But I think, again, the sky's the limit, and really from a return on investment and investment in general and doing less with more and making it standardized and consistent. I mean, automation is truly the direction that we're seeing a lot of organizations go, but it's just starting that journey, going through that maturity model and identifying, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. But I just want to say thank you.
All right, folks, if there are no other questions or anything, by all means, I encourage you to give us a call at 844-FLYCAST, 844-359-2278. Chat with us online. We're happy to talk to you, help you out there. info@flycastpartners.com. Thank each and every one of you. And Francis does say less is more. So true. Thank you again. But definitely, folks, we appreciate the time that you took to listen to this presentation today. And it looks like we definitely touched a chord with a lot of you here. There's a lot of interest, and Flycast Partners would be happy to help you out with that interest that you may have, no matter what that level is. So with that being said, enjoy the rest of your week, folks, and we'll see you on our next presentation. John and David, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.